Well, we have a rather exciting week in the astrology, ladies and gentlemen. We have Saturn moving into the sign of Aries. Yes, it has been a tremendously long feeling transit with Saturn in Pisces, but finally, Saturn is ingressing into the first sign of the zodiac. So Saturn will first ingress into the sign of Aries on Saturday, May the 24th of 2025, and will be in Aries until April the 12th of 2028. However, we do know that Saturn does have a retrograde cycle, so Saturn will be stationing retrograde later on this year, actually in July, in the sign of Aries, and then will ingress back into the sign of Pisces in September, on September 1st of 2025. After stationing direct, Saturn will re-ingress into the sign of Aries in February of 2026. And then as this transit progresses, we will cover Saturn's retrograde cycles and other transits that are happening, because there is a rather big one that is coming up, Saturn, which will be conjunct to Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries. So this is a huge one, which we are going to dive further into, because we really can't talk about Saturn in Aries without talking about Neptune in Aries, because they will both be there and they will be making a conjunction. But needless to say, Saturn will be in the sign of Aries until April 12th of 2028, so making this almost a 3-year transit. Now, Saturn does have a 28 to 30-year cycle around the entirety of the zodiac, making each transit through each sign of the zodiac about 2.5 to 3 years, somewhere in there. So if you were born anywhere from 1996 to 1999, you likely are moving into your first Saturn return. Now, I have other videos on the Saturn return, and it is really a coming of age. It's also a transit that a lot of people kind of fear or they dread it approaching in their life. It is definitely a topic for another video, but this is something that you can research and look forward to if you do have your natal Saturn in Aries, or if you were born from 1996 to 1999. Specific dates will vary. Now, I want to start off by saying that this is certainly not Saturn's favorite place to be. We're going into Martian territory, and Saturn in Mars's territory is actually in its fall position. So in the opposite sign of Libra, Saturn is exalted. So it is in fall position when it is going through the sign of Aries, meaning it's not comfortable here. It usually doesn't do very well here, and there's a clash of energy. They are certainly contradictory energies. And when we think about the general properties and associations with Saturn, we think of things like structure, long-term commitment, discipline, restriction, limitations, difficulty, challenges, boundaries, patience, maturity. And this is where we're trying to grow long-term success, not instant gratification, where we would find that type of energy in the sign of Aries. So as you can see, we can already start to see that there's a clash of energies. You know, Aries is a sign ruled by Mars. It's very independent. It can be very impulsive. It's all about, you know, action that we're taking, the energy that we have, the drive. It can be a very restless energy. It's very much about, you know, leadership. It's that rapid fire beginning spark energy. So Aries is the spark. When Saturn enters Aries, this is about building a long-term fire, because with just a spark, that spark can go out instantly. But Saturn is trying to teach us to keep that energy and momentum going long-term. So while Saturn doesn't necessarily do very well in the sign of Aries, I do think that it has very significant lessons. And if we can learn the lessons of this transit, specifically where it's happening in your chart, then it will be very beneficial to you long term. I don't think I would be too far off to say that this kind of inhibits or limits our ability to take action on things, and it's trying to teach us to discipline our impulses or our desires, right? Saturn really wants us to take our time with things, whereas Aries energy really wants to have everything to happen instantaneously, and it wants instant gratification. So we have to learn the rules of the land with Saturn coming into Martian territory. Of course, this is Mars's home, so it's almost like Saturn needs to speed things up a little bit, whereas Aries energy, you know, it's Martian and Aries territory. So it's under their jurisdiction, more or less. We think of Aries as associated with the first house or the ascendant. It's the beginning of the zodiac, right? So as we were saying, this is the spark, and this is an energy of, you know, Saturn is an energy of maturity. It can sometimes be associated with old age, the father figure, the grandfather figure. So this could be an energy of needing to grow up fast, taking on responsibilities and getting things done that need to get done, even if that seems seemingly, you know, difficult or quite impossible. It's almost like you're being held back. You have all these ideas and you want to take all these different actions, but you feel inhibited in some way. It's really this energy of pioneering with purpose, facing problems, issues, and difficulties head on, not being afraid to get a little bit confrontational or to solve issues. It's about mastering our assertion in a healthy, mature way and mature manner of expressing that assertion. This definitely builds stamina long term, and it's growth that comes at the cost of friction. We're learning our ambitions, our desires, and our drive versus our limitations, and where have we taken on too much? Where do we need to put more energy into? And you certainly will need to look and see where Aries is particularly in your chart, which house is ruled by the sign of Aries. This will give you more context, of course. Now, I also want to mention the kind of paradigm that we're moving away from. We're moving out of the age of Pisces. Everything is moving out of the sign of Pisces into the sign of Aries. All the outer planets are changing signs this year. Victim culture is dead. We saw a lot of that when Neptune and Saturn are both in the sign of Pisces. Pisces energy can be very self-deceptive. So that is energy that we're moving away from. It's really an energy of fears or the subconscious or the shadows. And we're not letting our fears hold us back anymore. We have to move through our fears and move through our uncertainty, move through the Neptunian confusion, because we're certainly going to have that. But we need to remember to have faith. When we're talking about Neptune in the mix of this energy, it's really action that's fueled by our faith. We're daring to dream, if you will, and we should not let our fears or our uncertainty of the future hold us back from taking the actions that we need to. But we also need to learn where our actual physical limitations are. You know, we are redefining what it means to be a leader and leadership, and we're figuring out how to take calculated, smart risks that will be beneficial to us in the long term, not necessarily things that will give us instant gratification or instant payout, right off the bat. Saturn can learn a lot from the sign of Aries in bringing back that youthful, free-spirited, fiery type energy, and Aries and Martian energy can learn from Saturn and being more disciplined and learning that there are limitations, there are restrictions, and there are lessons. And if you follow astrology, I'm sure you know that Saturn is considered the planet of karma. So this area of the zodiac is under the influence of a karmic influence. I am a karmic and evolutionary astrologer, so I very much do heavily focus on the karmic aspect of things. But we have to remember that karma isn't always bad. Karma is just energy that has kind of been recycled and reused. If you believe in past lives, then this would be recycled into, your new lifetime here. But karma is there so that you can escape the loop of karma. It's not necessarily there to punish you, but it's there to teach you something. But we are going to be talking about this in depth in further videos. This is going to kind of get you guys started. But yes, coming up on this Saturday, May 24th of 2025, Saturn is finally moving into the sign of Aries. We will kind of have a preview of what's to come over the next 3 years until Saturn, of course, stations retrograde and then goes back into the sign of Pisces. But for the most part, this is energy that is up and coming. We have Neptune in the sign of Aries, a conjunction with Neptune and Saturn coming up. We have Uranus changing signs, moving into the sign of Gemini. We have Jupiter moving into Cancer. There is a lot of energy going on. So personal readings for astrology and tarot up at the link in my bio, y'all. And much love and stay groovy.